have you ever been on your level up journey and you have somebody who is blatantly, clearly, obviously trying to sabotage you, and you are just trying to fathom like how they have the time to do that, yet you're feeling like you don't have enough time in the day to get done all the things that you want to? Stay tuned to the end of this video because I'm going to be going deeper into the psychology of people who have time to sabotage. So this actually came up, in my real life in a situation. It was nothing major. It was something as simple as me trying to, just achieve a basic objective. And it kind of just, I'm doing my thing, and then I have somebody who's literally like just playing around, but trying to get in the way of what I'm trying to do. And, it wasn't a huge deal, but I think it kind of made something click for me, because there was a situation where I didn't think the person was being malicious, but I still set the boundary. But it still made me think deeper into other aspects of life. When there is somebody who's coming out of the woodworks, or somebody who's already existed in your life, and then all of a sudden it seems like now they're trying to sabotage you, and you're trying to figure out, like, I noticed that, like, at least for me, I would be trying to figure out, like, where are they getting the time? Why am I important enough for you to be trying to sabotage? And I would be taking it so personally. And I think that I've often had that idea. And for a long time, I've had that belief that when people are trying to sabotage you, it is very personal. But I don't even think that is always the case. Now, of course, sometimes people, they will have this deep, long, malicious vendetta. And this would be in the cases of jealousy and envy, where somebody is specifically sabotaging you because you're you. But I think that what happens in general, and this is also to you who want to make sure, how do you make sure that you're not sabotaging the next person? I'm a big believer in you cannot be social climbing yourself while you're trying to sabotage somebody else. And I'm going to say that again. You cannot be trying to social climb yourself and trying to social climb at the same time. That's why, to me, I'll, like, when somebody's moving a certain type of way, I will just completely not understand, but you just have to look at that situation in that moment. And it's like, okay, you are trying to achieve an objective. You are trying to reach a goal. You are trying to gain some sort of privilege. You're basically on a mission. You are being a productive person. Like, you have set a goal and you are actively working towards achieving it. And that is why you're focused on doing whatever task it is, whatever new routine it is, whatever that objective is that you're trying to accomplish. That's what you're focused on. But the other person who is not social climbing, because they can't be social climbing and sabotaging at the same time, the difference between you and them is that they don't have goals. And I have just been thinking about how I think a lot of times people struggle because they're waiting for external circumstances and external structures to tell them how to live their life. Something that I've seen as a huge trend that I think is absolutely amazing on social media. I've seen it on YouTube. It's something that I implement in my own life, but it's this whole idea of curating your own curriculum for yourself. So what does this mean? It's like, okay, let's say you're an adult, and you are no longer, like, you're not in grade school anymore or primary. Like, you're not in you may not be in college anymore. You don't have professors. You don't have, your parents. You don't have people forcing you to do things anymore. Where for some people, you may have grown up being forced to take certain lessons, being forced to learn a language, being forced to do this, that, and the third, not having a lot of free time, being forced to play sports, being forced to go to camp, being forced to volunteer. And I'm using the word force because a lot of people, where they may be resentful in some places for situations like this, oftentimes they also end up being very grateful for that. Like, I'm so thankful that you showed me what structure in my life looks like. You showed me what it looks like to have discipline, and it's a great thing that we have these sorts of situations that we experience, because for a lot of people, what happens is once they graduate, or even, you'll see people who, whether it is like a college break, whether it's a school break, whether it is just passing from maybe being a teenager. Sorry, I had to go fix something in the background, but I was saying that you'll even see this with people who are making the shift from being a teenager to being an autonomous adult. You'll see this with people who are going from what they may feel is a restrictive relationship over to being single. And oftentimes what people don't understand is that when it is just you, if you feel very very confined by having to eat healthy. Okay, when you're out of whether it's your parents' house, whether it is, you're out of a strict, like maybe you were an athlete, so you're not playing the sport anymore. Maybe you are in like the military or something and they're forcing you to be fed a certain way, or even you're away at camp or something. Any of these situations where other people, they're enforcing these rules, a lot of people make the mistake of feeling as if the rules are the issue. And I feel like I've touched on this in another video before. Check out my last video if you didn't see it yet. I was talking about something that women who are leveled up have all mastered, and it has to do with this as well. But in this video, I want to talk a little bit more about the people who, what happens. Just like at the end of that video, I was talking about how, some people, they don't set limits for themselves. And so they feel so like they're being a rebel against everything. But you have to think about, okay, let's say you have decided, no, I'm not going to be like that. I am going to be an adult who still gives myself the gift of structure. I will set myself a bedtime. I will set myself, limits around my caloric intake every day. I will set myself limits on how much I consume as far as like media, music, TV, scrolling, all of those things. I set myself a limit based on all of these different things. People who are not doing that, they're not giving themselves that structure. So when they see you and you're trying to learn a skill, you're trying to better yourself in some way, they just have all of these they have idle hands, which a lot of people, where it's something that I don't always believe in, but there's this saying where people will say like, idle hands make for the devil's work or something, where, you're basically saying that people who are not busy, and they're not trying to achieve their own goal, oftentimes they're going to end up getting into trouble or causing some sort of trouble. Because you have to think, like, if you have this goal of, okay, I'm trying to, just using a random example, let's say you're trying to train to be able to do a 5K, and then you have somebody else in your life who does not have that same goal. When you're in that situation, when you're around them, the only way that they can be somebody who is I'm trying to break this down. Like, I want to figure out how to phrase this properly. I feel as though sometimes people who sabotage, they're not even maliciously doing it. They're just not as ambitious as you are. So it can be something as simple as like, okay, you're training and they're just not training. So in that time where they're idle, they're not training, they may be more willing to encourage you to do things because they don't have certain sorts of considerations and limits in their own life. So it could be things like maybe you have to be up by 6 a.m. to do your morning training session. But this person, it may not even be that they're like, ooh, F you and you wanting to do a marathon. It's literally just that they don't have that same structure in their life. Maybe they have structure in another place. And so it is like not even a malicious thing. They just don't have that type of structure. Maybe they have structure in this area, but they don't have structure in that area. They will still try to get in the way of what you're trying to do, and encourage you to, let's stay out late and party. Let's do this. Let's go to this, let's go out to the club. Let's go do something. Let's eat something that's outside of your diet, just because they don't have that structure. And when people don't create structure, they are trying to test the limits. This is kind of like a grim example, but it's even like when you talk about, people will talk about patriarchy, and you'll see these on the street interviews where it's like somebody asking a man, like, what's the youngest woman that you date? And the man is like in his 50s or something, and he's saying 18, and people will typically provide the commentary that he's not saying 18 because of some moral reason that he has. He's not saying 18 due to a limit that he has set for himself. He is somebody who is reacting to the external limit that I'm going to follow legal morality, and legal morality says that I'm not committing a crime as long as she's at least 18, and so therefore that is how I'm going to live my life within that limit. Versus somebody else, they may have another way that they set their limits for themselves, and that they set up discipline in their life. And you have to be very careful around people who are not having goals in the same way that you are, because they will, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they will sabotage you. It's going to happen. Living a life, and anybody who is either living a life that's not as ambitious as yours, not as structured as yours, or it has a different structure, you're going to have some sort of power structure, or not power structure, power struggle, where you're basically trying to see who's going to get sabotaged. Because it's either that their, way of life of not getting anything done is going to be something that they feel like you're creating friction with, because you are not available to sit around and do nothing. You're not, really encouraging sitting around doing nothing. If it's little things where it's not even an intentional friction all the time, but it could be things like, oh, well, what did you do over the weekend? And they just sat around, but you went here, you did this, you accomplished that. You are, you've got hobbies, you've got goals, you've got family and friends, you've got things that you're actually doing. When it comes to that other person, they're just living a life that's more likely to sabotage you, because, they feel probably normal about what the status quo is in their life until they talk to you, until they come across you, even until they are in the same space with you. Because a lot of people think that this is a shared thing. They think that everybody, and this is a lot of times, I think people who have some sort of, sometimes arrested development, sometimes they are just like very juvenile in their mental space. Like, even if they're not actually a kid, they can still think in this way where it's like they're trying to rebel against something. And it's like, as an adult, I don't have anything to need to rebel against. I actually feel as though, certain structured things and rules, oftentimes they're more so disliked when you don't see that they're in your best interest. But I think that there will even be, like, some people, they're going to the military, which that's just an example that I'm using because I have known a lot of people who have served and things like that. Sometimes people are going for all of these other like random benefits, or they're going because they have really nothing else to do. But some people actually desire living a life of discipline, and they actually feel grateful to somebody else providing that structure for their life. And I think that when you're the type of person who's leveling up, you are going to stop fighting the concept of structure. You're going to stop fighting the concept of rules. And when you see that type of mindset in other people, you will become maybe not necessarily repulsed, but you will just feel like it doesn't completely vibe with you as well. Because there's somebody else that's just like, oh, rules are bad. And you're like, wow, my rules actually have helped me build the life that I want. So what kinds of rules are you following? Like, a lot of people, they're not willing to admit that the structure that they're following is just a bad structure, or the rules that they have followed have just been bad rules, or they're rules that came from people that just had different goals than them, or, they came from somebody who just didn't have their best interest at heart. But when I think about the rules and the discipline and the limits that I set in my own life, I love rules, I love discipline, and I love structure, because the ones that I set for myself allow me to actually achieve my goals. So I don't have some complicated relationship or some negative relationship with, rules and boundaries and goal setting. I don't think of goals only in the terms of like, oh, somebody who's working in sales, and so they're like a slave to their job and all day. And I'm not saying inherently if you work in sales, you're a slave to your job. I'm saying like somebody who like their main interaction with the concept of goal setting is something that doesn't really benefit them. It's this idea of like, oh, well, I'm going to work for this large corporation, and then I'm going to be helping their family experience generational wealth. But I'm just here and I'm focused on this type of goal and this type of quota and stuff. Some people, that is like the main way that they are kind of interacting with goal setting, and it leaves a bad taste in their mouth because it's a job that they hate. They feel like they don't have a purpose in everything, or maybe they had goals from being a child, and maybe having like certain people, like adults around them, not really truly see them and nurture their gifts. So it would be like, if you think of I would say there's a certain generation that I feel like is largely my demographic on this channel. People who grew up and watched High School Musical movies. But I will say it's little things like think about Troy Bolton, him having this passion for like the stage and theater and things like that as well. But his father basically trying to measure him solely on the scale of, sports and athleticism only, so he's not really seen. And so for people like that, they can have, if they're stuck under some sort of like rule that feels oppressive, they can misattribute the discomfort or the difficulty with goal setting in general, with boundaries in general, with rules in general. And that leads to people who end up becoming obese. That leads to people who are broke. That leads to people who they're not able to maintain positive relationships with people that they respect, because anybody who respects themselves, they will set limits for themselves, and they will only maintain limits or they'll only maintain relationships with people who set limits in their own life and are comfortable with adhering to the limits of the relationship. And so these types of people, you have to really notice these traits and see how much of a leech this type of person can become, or how distracting they can become from your goals. Because it can be something as simple as, I saw this video, like it just went viral. It was Ari Fletcher, and it was like somebody recording, I guess, like her sitting in a chair, and it's like her BBL, and I guess it was like hanging out the back or something, which I don't know, just thinking about myself, like this might be TMI, but like my butt is not that big. But I don't think that if your butt was that big and it was like natural that it would do that. But that is not really even why I brought that up. That is kind of here nor there. Like that's neither here nor there. But the person posted this video or whatever. I don't know if they posted it to Snapchat or they posted it like I don't know, Twitter. I don't really know where it was that somebody first posted. I think I saw it on like a celebrity tea channel or something like that. Because sometimes I have to watch those videos just to understand what's going on in the world and to also get inspired for videos. But I'm just gonna take a sip of water. Hold on. Okay. But I was just thinking, like, and I saw all the way in the comments, people were saying like, okay, so who posted this? Because that was definitely not her friend. That is what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about people who they don't understand the fact that no matter how grown you are, if you want to have relationships, healthy, mature adult relationships, you need to learn how to like respect a limit somewhere. And I feel like most people, we are self-centered creatures, I think. And so I think that if somebody's not setting limits for their own self, like they're not setting limits on how much candy they eat, like as an adult, they're sitting there eating candy like they are an unsupervised child on Halloween. I've literally seen that. And it's like I've observed people like that. And when that happens, you always end up seeing it bleed into another place in their life. It's that they just don't like limits. They just don't like rules. And with that situation with, Ari's friend basically posting her in that way, that is, at least for me, and I would say for most people watching this video, that would probably be something that falls out. Like that would probably be like going past a certain limit that you have in a friendship. Because people, everybody's different on this. Some people have these friendships where they're okay calling each other a B word and I will say there's even things like, if you're thinking about like LGBTQ culture, like even things like the C word can be like used in multiple different ways, where it's something that could be offensive depending on one person saying it. But nowadays, and I don't know if it's just nowadays, but like that is like, yeah, it's your slaying. But there are so many things where it's like people just don't understand rapport. And I think that it's not even all the time that people don't understand rapport, but sometimes people understand it and they just don't care. Some people, they are willing, like let's say the friend just wanted some spotlight on her, or she just wanted to, some people feel like they have to knock the other person down a peg in order to feel like there is more room for them to be in a higher position in society. They are more willing to cross a boundary or to step on some toes. And I think that a lot of people, the people who get it all in the wrong ways, or they get it all and they lose it, or they end up not being able to leave behind a good legacy, those are the people who they'll cross the limit in the here and now, but they don't think about the future. Every person who is like, oh, you know, I'm grown, nobody can tell me what time to go to bed, nobody can tell me what to spend my money on, nobody can tell me like how much to eat and how much to work out and, you know, to do schoolwork and to learn, those people as adults, they end up being ignorant, stupid, broke, fat. Like, that's what they end up being. It's like, okay, it's fine to lead your life, and you should be the person who's like in the driving seat in your life. However, like, I would not, like, for example, I am not like a scientist, right? I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not like a personal trainer. So when it comes to the limits that I set for myself regarding nutrition and fitness and things, I go to the experts for that. I'm not just going to say like, well, Wild World feels like doing this. Wild World is grown. It's like, okay, but Wild World is not going to defy like the laws of like digestion and like the laws of like you whoever you are. There's no amount of you being grown that's going to be able to surpass things and how far you go with things like class, with things like decorum, with things like setting and not crossing your own boundaries, but also doing that for other people. But what do you think about this, worldies? Let me know down in the comments below. And until next time, worldies, eyes on the prize.